want to talk about something very specific today. Not popular news, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless. And that is, I was just looking at my lovely Apple Music, formerly iTunes. I was listening to some music, practicing some stuff, and I noticed two of the main genres that I've spent most of my life learning how to play are not in the top categories. If we look at the categories on Apple Music, jazz and classical do not even make the top 15 categories. I'm sure if I keep scrolling down, no fitness, feel good, Christian is before classical. Classical is after Christian, like the top 20. I don't even know where. Oh, jazz is like in the top 30 after kids and indie and 2000s. So now you might be going, well, this is probably meant for you. But my guess is if you checked the categories, unless you're just listening to classical music nonstop, which I listen to quite a bit, my guess is the categories are going to look the same even if they're generated per person. So let's talk about this a little bit. Because if you're someone like me, you spent a lot of your growing up years listening to classical music and potentially jazz, both because it was kind of the thing to do as, just education and just like learning things, and because you're interested in music and piano, and a lot of the best pianists are playing classical music and jazz. Well, why does it not even make the top 15 then? Here is my thought. I think that two things have happened. One is a little more tricky than the other. So let's start with the less tricky one. The less tricky one is they have become more irrelevant because they are harder to digest. They're a little bit more intense of listening, and it takes a little more focus to really pay attention, and so they have a smaller audience because of that. And music has become so accessible with phones and digital streaming that everyone listens to music now, and so it's going to appeal to the least common denominator. And that's not a slur or a slight against anyone. It's just saying that, if you pulled everyone, the simpler music is going to win because that's just going to appeal to more people. And then at the same time, you have more and more categories being created. And so it's not just pop, because, if it was just pop and then rock, well, then it would be like the top two categories. But, you have chill on here. You have spatial audio, which that, of course, is just promotion. You have DJ mixes. You have hip hop. So the amount of categories has ballooned at the same time as the audience ballooning, at the same time as jazz and classical still maintaining their small yet significant cultural impact. That's one theory, and I think it makes a lot of sense, but I don't think that tells the whole story. And here's where I think the whole story gets to be told. And that is, we're recategorizing what I would consider jazz and classical. What we consider traditional or historical jazz and classical is what we call jazz and classical. But what true new jazz or true new classical music is generally found in some different genre. It's found in rock and roll. They're doing something cool with, some jazzy chord progressions, maybe some Tame Impala weirdness or something else. Snarky Puppy, throwing in some different things. At the same time, classical is found a lot in movies and television shows and anime. That's where you find a lot of this classical music, new classical music. So it's not that these styles and genres and thought have gone away. It's more that what we categorize them has changed. And then we have this historical vestige left. And I think that historical vestige is because of two reasons. The first is that music exists, and it's always going to exist as part of history. And so where do you put it? Well, yeah, you put it in classical and jazz. And the music that we hear now doesn't really sound that similar to that, so it makes sense to categorize them differently. But then also, I think there's another bit of this, which is a lot more culturally derived, of the fact that there are these really intense people who view this music as being far more culturally important and significant than anything else, and they are a victim of their own success. As they academize and categorize and defend classical and jazz, they are making it irrelevant. Because if you're telling me that when you sit down and you play jazz, it has to sound a certain way or be a certain thing, well, guess what? It's going to die out and be less relevant. If you're telling me that I play classical and I play it wrong, well, again, it's going to start dying out. Is that saying that you can't have opinions and can't have ideas? No. It just means that the more you gatekeep these things, the more they are going to die in popularity and less likely that people are going to be interested in pursuing them. Well, where does that leave us? It leaves us here. If you love something, set it free. Because if you try to say, well, rock and roll is this one specific thing, oh, this new band can't be rock and roll because insert reasons here. What you're going to do is you're going to create two different categories, and that one category is going to slowly die in popularity, and then the new category will slowly rise in popularity, and lo and behold, guess what? Rock and roll, hip-hop, rap, whatever you want to call it, classic pop, I could easily see that being a category soon. All of those are going to get slowly ranked lower and lower and lower until they become irrelevant as well. If you enjoyed this, think about following me, leaving a like. Do you agree with my opinion? Do you think that this is true? Let me know, and we'll talk later. Peace.